A black woman named Vanessa walks into an upscale clothing store managed by Tom, a man whose assumptions about who belongs there lead to an unexpected and dramatic confrontation. What starts as a simple visit to observe her new store turns into a public humiliation when Tom wrongly accuses her of not fitting in. But later, Vanessa returns, accompanied by her legal team, ready to reveal the truth and set things right. What was it about this seemingly routine visit that led to such a dramatic turn of events? Stick around to find out. But before we get started, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you find this tale of life-changing moments engaging, don't forget to subscribe. The upscale clothing store stood at the corner of a bustling street, its large glass windows reflecting the vibrancy of the city. The store was known for its luxurious fabrics, designer labels, and a clientele that consisted mostly of the wealthy elite. Inside, everything was pristine. Marble floors gleamed under the soft lighting, and carefully arranged racks displayed clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The store was a symbol of status, a place where being seen meant you had made it in life. And Tom, the manager, loved every bit of it. Tom was a man in his early 40s, with slicked-back hair and an air of superiority that was hard to miss. He took pride in running what he often called a high-class establishment. To him, the store was more than just a business. It was a reflection of his ability to cater to the best of society. He had been working there for years, slowly climbing the ranks until he was entrusted with managing the entire place. Tom made sure everything was perfect, from the way the mannequins were dressed to how the customers were treated. At least certain customers. For Tom, the ideal shopper was someone who looked like success. That usually meant wealthy, well-dressed, and more often than not, white. He had a way of gravitating toward the customers who fit that mold, offering them extra attention and special treatment. But when someone walked in who didn't quite match his expectations, he would quietly dismiss them, assuming they didn't belong. On this particular day, Tom stood near the register, his sharp eyes scanning the store. A well-dressed couple had just entered, and he flashed them a charming smile, already planning how he could upsell them on some of the more expensive items. As they moved toward the designer jackets, Tom subtly directed one of the sales associates to cater to them. The door chimed, and Tom's attention shifted. Another customer had entered the store, but this one didn't command his interest. She wasn't dressed in designer clothing or wearing expensive jewelry. Instead, she wore a simple pair of jeans, a loose sweater, and sneakers. She moved with an easy grace, her brown skin glowing under the soft lights, but Tom's eyes barely registered her. To him, she was just another passerby who probably wouldn't buy anything. This woman was Vanessa. Vanessa was a successful businesswoman, though you wouldn't guess it from her casual attire. She had recently acquired this very store through a business investment deal, but no one knew it yet. Not the staff, not the customers, and certainly not Tom. She had decided to visit the store incognito before making her official appearance as the new owner. It was her way of observing how things were run, without the fanfare that usually accompanied such an announcement. As Vanessa stepped further into the store, she immediately felt the subtle shifts in energy. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. The way the salespeople seemed to gravitate towards certain customers while others, like her, were left to wander. Vanessa was no stranger to this kind of treatment. She had encountered it before in different forms and different places, but today it stung a little more, given that this was now her store. She casually walked over to a display of dresses, running her fingers over the fabric. From the corner of her eye, she saw Tom standing by the register, talking to the couple. He was smiling, gesturing to different items, and clearly putting in effort to impress them. Vanessa couldn't help but smile to herself. She wasn't there to be impressed, though. She was there to observe. Tom glanced in her direction for a brief moment, then quickly looked away. He had already dismissed her as someone who didn't belong. He couldn't be bothered to offer her the same warm greeting he gave the others. Vanessa noted the interaction, but remained calm. She wasn't looking for special treatment, just fair treatment. As she wandered through the store, she took mental notes. The sales staff seemed competent, but there was a clear bias in the way they distributed their attention. She saw one of the associates hover near a woman draped in designer clothing, offering suggestions and compliments, while another customer, who appeared to be browsing with genuine interest, was completely ignored. Vanessa found herself wondering how much business the store had lost because of these quiet acts of exclusion. Vanessa had spent nearly an hour observing the store, carefully noting how things were run. She'd seen enough to understand the culture Tom had cultivated. Now, she was ready to leave, but before she could make it to the door, Tom's eyes landed on her once again. This time, his stare was more focused, his expression less subtle. Something had changed in his demeanor, and Vanessa could sense it. As she moved toward the front, Tom stepped forward, cutting her off just as she passed one of the expensive dress racks. He wasn't smiling this time. His posture was stiff, and his voice carried a hint of condescension. "Excuse me, miss," he said, with an edge that made it clear this wasn't a friendly offer of assistance. "Are you sure you're finding everything you need? Perhaps I can help you find something more suitable for your budget." Vanessa paused and looked at him, calm as ever. She'd seen this play out before, not just in stores like this, but in countless other places, restaurants, airports, even on the streets. People like Tom always thought they knew who belonged and who didn't, and they were usually wrong. She met his eyes evenly, unflustered. "Thank you," she replied with a polite smile. "I'm just looking." Tom's eyes flickered with impatience. He wasn't used to being brushed off, especially not by someone he'd already deemed unworthy of the store's high-end merchandise. He cleared his throat and took a step closer, lowering his voice as if they were in on some shared secret. "I'm just saying," he continued, "we have a lot of very exclusive items here. Not everything is within reach for everyone, if you know what I mean." Vanessa felt the weight of his words, but her expression didn't change. She wasn't here to argue with him. Not yet, at least. She had bigger plans for this store, and Tom was only a small part of the picture. Instead, she simply nodded, giving him no reason to escalate the situation further. "I appreciate your concern," Vanessa said, her voice steady. "But I'm fine." Tom blinked, clearly not expecting her calm reaction. He seemed momentarily thrown off, unsure how to proceed. His eyes darted to the register where another customer was being helped, but then they quickly returned to Vanessa. She could tell he wasn't done yet. "Well, if you need anything," he said, trying to regain his composure, "just let me know." Vanessa gave him another nod, then turned back to the display she'd been examining. For a moment, she thought that would be the end of it, but as she moved toward the rear section of the store, she noticed Tom following her. He wasn't making any effort to hide it now. His face had hardened into a look of suspicion, and his earlier veneer of politeness was gone. Vanessa pretended not to notice him as she moved toward the velvet rope that separated the more exclusive items from the rest of the store. She had every right to be there, and more than enough wealth to afford anything in the section, but she could feel Tom's disapproving stare as if it were a physical barrier. She stepped past the rope, determined not to let his judgment affect her, but it didn't take long for him to intervene. "Miss," Tom said sharply, appearing beside her once again. This time, there was no pretense of offering help. "I'm going to have to ask you to stay in the front section of the store." Vanessa turned to him, her expression cool but questioning. "Excuse me? This area is reserved for our higher-end customers," he said, his voice tight. "I'm sure you understand." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you determine who qualifies as a higher-end customer?" Tom hesitated, clearly taken aback by her directness. His eyes shifted to the few other people in the store, most of whom were now watching the interaction with curious glances. He quickly tried to recover, but the tension was already growing. "I don't mean anything by it," Tom said, his tone defensive. "It's just that this section, as well, is not for everyone." Vanessa crossed her arms, looking at him with a mix of amusement and disbelief. She wasn't sure if Tom even realized how deep he was digging his own grave, but she was content to let him keep talking. "And what makes you think it's not for me?" she asked calmly. Tom's face flushed slightly, and his frustration became more apparent. "I just don't want anyone to get the wrong idea," he said. "We've had incidents before, you know? People coming in, touching things they can't afford, even taking things." Vanessa's calm demeanor faltered for a split second, and Tom caught it. He mistook the flash of anger in her eyes as proof that he was right. "So you think I'm here to steal something?" Vanessa asked, her voice low but firm. Tom shifted uncomfortably, but he wasn't about to back down. "I didn't say that," he replied quickly. "But you have to understand, I'm responsible for this store, and I can't just let anyone wander around the exclusive section. It's for your own good." Vanessa let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "For my own good?" she repeated, the disbelief clear in her voice. Tom seemed to realize how ridiculous he sounded, but instead of backing off, he doubled down. "Look, I don't want to cause a scene," he said, glancing around at the growing number of customers watching. "I'm just asking you to respect the rules of the store. If you can't do that, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. She had been patient long enough. It was one thing for Tom to make assumptions, but now he was crossing a line, one that he wouldn't be able to walk back from. Still, she kept her composure, refusing to give him the reaction he seemed to be hoping for. "I'm not breaking any rules," Vanessa said, her voice steady. "I'm a customer, and I have the right to be here, just like anyone else." Tom shook his head, clearly growing more frustrated by the second. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice again, though it was loud enough for others to hear. "Look, lady," he hissed, "you're causing a disturbance. If you don't leave right now, I'm going to call security." Vanessa didn't flinch. She stood her ground, meeting his gaze with an intensity that made him pause. The other customers were openly watching now, whispering to each other as they tried to make sense of what was happening. Tom, however, seemed oblivious to the fact that he was digging himself deeper into trouble. "Call security if you want," Vanessa said, her voice calm but unyielding. "But I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, Tom hesitated. He clearly didn't expect her to stand up to him, and for the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But it quickly passed, replaced by the same arrogance that had fueled his behavior since the moment Vanessa walked through the door. "Fine," Tom snapped. "You want to play it that way? Let's see what security has to say about this." He turned and walked briskly toward the back of the store, leaving Vanessa standing there. The other customers were whispering even more loudly now, some of them glancing at her with curiosity, others with disapproval. But Vanessa didn't care. She had dealt with far worse than this, and she wasn't about to let Tom intimidate her. As she waited, she could feel the weight of the situation settling over the store. The atmosphere had shifted from one of casual shopping to tense anticipation. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next, but Vanessa remained calm, her mind focused on the bigger picture. A few minutes later, Tom returned with 2 security guards in tow. He had a triumphant look on his face, as if he'd already won the battle. The guards looked uncertain, but they followed Tom's lead, approaching Vanessa with cautious steps. "Ma'am," one of the guards said, his tone polite but firm, "we're going to have to ask you to leave the store." Vanessa looked at him, her expression neutral. "And why is that?" The guard hesitated, glancing at Tom for guidance. Tom stepped forward, eager to take control of the situation. "She's been causing a disturbance," Tom said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "refusing to follow the store's rules. We can't have that kind of behavior here." Vanessa let out a small sigh, shaking her head. She had given Tom plenty of chances to stop this, but it was clear he wasn't going to back down. And now, he had made it a public spectacle. "I'm not causing a disturbance," Vanessa said, her voice clear and calm. "I'm simply shopping, just like everyone else." The guard shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation. He glanced at the other customers, some of whom were watching intently, while others pretended not to notice. "Look, ma'am," the guard said, his voice lowering. "I don't want to make this any harder than it has to be. Can we just avoid a scene?" Vanessa's eyes flickered with irritation. This was exactly what Tom wanted, a public humiliation, a spectacle that would show everyone in the store that people like her didn't belong. "I'm not leaving," Vanessa said firmly. "I haven't done anything wrong." Tom's face twisted with anger, and he stepped forward again, his voice rising. "You've done plenty wrong," he snapped. "You don't belong here. You're loitering, you're being disruptive, and you're making my staff uncomfortable. Now either you leave, or I'll have these men escort you out." Vanessa didn't move. She stood her ground, her gaze unwavering as she met Tom's furious eyes. Vanessa stood her ground, even as the tension in the store thickened with each passing second. Tom's words stung, but she didn't let it show. She was no stranger to these situations, where her success, wealth, and dignity were questioned simply because of how she looked. But today wasn't just another moment to rise above the insults. Today was about making a change. She could feel the eyes of the customers on her, some watching with sympathy, others with judgment, but none of that mattered now. Her focus was squarely on Tom and the choice he was about to make. Instead of escalating the situation further, Vanessa took a breath, composing herself. She wasn't going to reveal who she was just yet. Tom's behavior was unacceptable, but she wanted to give him one last opportunity to show some decency. After all, everyone deserves a chance to redeem themselves, even someone as prejudiced as him. With a steady voice, she spoke, "I'd like to speak to the store's owner." The calmness in her tone caught Tom off guard. He had been expecting more resistance, maybe even a scene, but Vanessa's composed request threw him. For a moment he hesitated, but it didn't last long. A smirk crept onto Tom's face, and he let out a dismissive chuckle. "You want to speak to the owner?" he repeated, the condescension dripping from his words. "Lady, the owner isn't going to waste their time on someone like you." Vanessa raised an eyebrow, but she didn't let his words rattle her. "Someone like me?" she asked calmly, prompting him to elaborate. Tom shrugged, his smirk widening. "Look, I'm trying to be nice here. The owner deals with real customers, high-end clients, people who actually belong in this store. You've already been causing a scene, and now you're asking for something that's way out of your league. Let's just call it a day, all right?" Vanessa's gaze didn't waver. "I'm asking for a conversation with the owner. That's not too much to ask." Tom's patience was wearing thin, and his annoyance became more apparent. "You're not listening. I've already told you. The owner doesn't have time for this kind of nonsense. Why don't you just leave before things get worse?" Vanessa could see where this was heading, but she remained calm, refusing to be provoked. She wasn't going to let him bully her into leaving, but she also knew this was no longer the time to argue. Tom was too far gone in his arrogance to realize the gravity of what he was doing. If he wasn't willing to listen to reason, then it was time for her to take control. "Fine," Vanessa said quietly, her voice cool and steady. "If you won't let me speak to the owner, then I'll leave." Tom looked almost triumphant, as if he'd won some kind of victory. He nodded, waving his hand dismissively. "Good choice. Now, if you'll just—" Before he could finish, Vanessa added, "But I will be back." Her words carried a weight that Tom didn't seem to fully understand, but the other staff members and some of the onlookers did. There was something about the way she said it that gave pause, but Tom, lost in his own sense of superiority, missed the significance. Yeah, he muttered, already turning away. "Just make sure you don't come back unless you're actually going to buy something." Vanessa didn't respond. She calmly walked toward the exit, her steps measured and deliberate. Tom watched her leave with a smug expression, completely unaware of the storm he had just unleashed. Once outside, Vanessa took a deep breath, her composure still intact. She wasn't angry, at least not in the way Tom probably assumed. She had learned long ago that anger rarely solved anything. What she felt now was a quiet determination. This was about more than just setting things right. This was about making sure Tom, and anyone like him, would never treat another person like this again. She reached into her purse, pulling out her phone. The time had come to put her plan into motion. She dialed the number of her business partner, James, a sharp and savvy lawyer who had been with her through the entire acquisition process. "James," she said, once he picked up, "we need to take action." On the other end, James's tone immediately shifted. "What happened?" Vanessa gave him a brief rundown of the situation, explaining Tom's behavior and how he had treated her. James, ever the professional, listened carefully, but Vanessa could hear the simmering frustration in his voice as she recounted the events. "He called security on you?" James asked, incredulous. "Yes," Vanessa confirmed. "But that's not even the worst of it. It's his attitude, the way he treats customers, specifically customers who don't fit his idea of high-end. This isn't just about me. It's about the culture he's created in that store." James was silent for a moment, processing everything. "All right," he said finally. "What's the plan?" Vanessa glanced back at the store's entrance, her mind already made up. "I'm coming back," she said. "But this time, I'm bringing you and the rest of the team with me. It's time for Tom to meet the real owner." James let out a low chuckle. "This is going to be interesting." Vanessa smiled, though there was no humor in it. You have no idea. Later that day, the atmosphere in the store had returned to its usual rhythm. Tom, feeling rather pleased with himself, had gone back to overseeing the staff, making sure everything was running smoothly. He hadn't given much thought to the woman he'd escorted out earlier. In his mind, she was just another customer who didn't belong, a minor inconvenience in his otherwise successful day. But that sense of satisfaction didn't last long. It started with the front door opening and Vanessa walking back into the store. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Dressed in a sharp, tailored business suit, she exuded an air of authority that couldn't be ignored. Flanking her were two impeccably dressed lawyers, including James and a small group of associates. Their presence immediately commanded attention, and the usual hum of activity in the store faltered as heads turned to watch. Tom, who had been near the back of the store, spotted the group and frowned. He didn't recognize Vanessa at first. Her casual attire from earlier had been replaced with a professional outfit that screamed success and power. For a brief moment, he thought she was just another wealthy client, but then their eyes met, and the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. His face paled. Vanessa walked forward with purpose, her expression unreadable, as Tom scrambled to recover. He straightened his posture, trying to mask his shock with a veneer of professionalism. But the damage had already been done. The other staff members watched in confusion, unsure of what was happening, but sensing that something big was about to unfold. Tom hurried over, his previous arrogance replaced by nervousness. Ma'am," he stammered, forcing a smile. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Is there something I can help you with?" Vanessa didn't answer right away. Instead, she let her gaze sweep over the store, taking in the sight of the staff and the customers, all of whom were watching the scene unfold. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable authority in it. "I'd like to speak to the owner of this store," she said. Tom blinked, momentarily confused. "The owner?" he repeated, his voice faltering. "Yes," Vanessa replied smoothly. "The owner." It was then that the full weight of her words began to sink in for Tom. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The realization hit him like a freight train, and his face turned a shade paler. Vanessa gave him a moment to process, then continued, "I believe you said earlier that the owner wouldn't waste their time on someone like me." Tom's jaw dropped slightly, but no words came out. The other staff members were staring now, whispering to each other in hushed tones. The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the store, and the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Vanessa stepped forward, her eyes locked on Tom's. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Vanessa Carter, the new owner of this store." Tom staggered back, as if the words had physically hit him. He stood frozen, his earlier smugness completely evaporated, replaced by sheer panic. The silence in the store was deafening, and everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Vanessa didn't give him much time to react. She gestured toward James and the other members of her legal team. "These are my associates," she continued. "We're here to discuss some changes that need to be made to how this store is run, effective immediately." Tom's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He had no idea what to say, no way to backtrack from the mess he had created. He had insulted and humiliated the very person who owned the store he thought he controlled. James stepped forward, pulling out some paperwork. "Ms. Carter has been reviewing the operations of this store," he said, his tone professional but firm. "And let's just say there are some serious concerns about how things have been handled, starting with your behavior today." Tom was speechless. He could feel his world crumbling around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. I didn't know," Tom stammered, his voice shaky. "I swear, I had no idea." James stood silently by Vanessa's side, his presence a silent reminder of the gravity of the situation. Vanessa, however, remained calm, her expression unreadable as she watched Tom squirm. "I'm sure you didn't," Vanessa replied coolly, crossing her arms. "But that doesn't change what happened, does it?" Tom swallowed hard, his mind racing to come up with an explanation, something that could salvage the situation. I made a mistake," he said, his tone pleading now. "I didn't mean anything by it. I just thought you were a customer who didn't Didn't what? Vanessa interrupted, her voice still calm, but with a sharper edge now. Didn't belong here? Tom's eyes widened, and he shook his head furiously. No, no, that's not what I meant. I wasn't sure. You didn't look like the usual. Vanessa raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. The usual what, Tom? The usual customer? The usual person you think deserves to be treated with respect. Tom's face was beet red now, his embarrassment palpable as he fumbled for the right words. No, I wasn't thinking. I'm really sorry. It was a misunderstanding. Vanessa let out a soft sigh, her patience wearing thin. Tom, do you even realize how offensive and discriminatory your behavior was today? You judge me based on how I looked, based on your assumptions about who belongs in this store. And it wasn't just me. I've seen how you treat other customers who don't fit your narrow idea of what's acceptable. Tom's panic deepened as he looked around the store. The other customers had begun to whisper among themselves, watching the confrontation unfold. Some of the customers who had sided with Tom earlier were now shifting uncomfortably, realizing they had been complicit in his treatment of Vanessa. I swear, it wasn't intentional, Tom said desperately. I was just trying to do my job. I didn't mean to. Your job, Vanessa interrupted again, her voice growing firmer, is to treat every customer with respect, regardless of how they look or what you assume about them. You didn't do that. Instead, you chose to humiliate me, to make me feel like I didn't belong. And you would have done the same to anyone else who didn't fit your narrow vision of what this store should be. Tom looked as though he might faint, his body rigid with fear. Please, Miss Carter, I'm begging you. I'll do better. I'll change. I didn't mean to disrespect you. It was a huge mistake, but I promise I'll make it right. Vanessa studied him for a moment, her expression thoughtful. She knew that his apologies were more about saving himself than any genuine remorse for his actions. Still, she gave him the opportunity to explain himself, though it didn't seem to be doing him any favors. I gave you chances, Tom, Vanessa said. I asked to speak to the owner earlier, and you laughed in my face. You had opportunities to change your approach, to correct your behavior, but instead, you doubled down. You were arrogant, dismissive, and prejudiced. Tom's heart raced in his chest. His entire career, his livelihood, was on the line. He could feel the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him, and he was running out of ways to excuse his actions. Please, Miss Carter, he begged, his voice shaking. I'll do anything to make this right. I don't want to lose my job. I'll step up. I'll be better. Just don't fire me. Vanessa raised an eyebrow, but there was no warmth in her gaze. Being better isn't a favor you're doing for me. It's the bare minimum that's expected of you. But right now, I have to ask myself if you're the right person to continue managing this store. If you're capable of creating a space that's inclusive and respectful for everyone. Tom's face crumpled, and he seemed to be on the verge of tears. The desperation in his voice was clear as he tried one last time to plead his case. Please, Miss Carter, I've worked here for years. I've been loyal to this store, to its reputation. I just didn't know. Please give me a chance to fix this. Vanessa let the silence hang in the air for a moment, considering his words. She could see the fear in his eyes, the panic that came from realizing just how badly he had messed up. But this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the culture of the store, the kind of environment she wanted to foster here. Finally, she spoke. I'm going to give you an ultimatum, Tom. Either you voluntarily step down as manager, effective immediately, or I will fire you on the spot. Tom's breath hitched in his throat, and he stared at her in shock. He hadn't expected such a direct, non-negotiable response. His mind raced as he tried to process the gravity of what she was saying. Vanessa continued, her tone firm but fair. This store is going to be run differently from now on. It will be a place where every customer, regardless of their race, appearance, or background, is treated with respect and dignity. If you can't be part of that, then there's no place for you here. Tom looked as though the ground had been ripped out from beneath him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was trapped, with no way to undo what had already been done. His pride, his arrogance, everything that had defined his career as manager, had come back to haunt him. The store's customers and staff were still watching, their whispers growing louder. They had seen Tom at his worst, and now they were witnessing his downfall. Some looked uncomfortable, while others seemed almost relieved to see justice being served. I'll step down, Tom finally whispered, his voice barely audible. Vanessa nodded, her expression still calm but resolute. That's the right choice. James stepped forward, offering Tom a pen and some paperwork to sign. Tom's hands trembled as he took the pen, his face flushed with humiliation. He scribbled his name on the document, officially relinquishing his role as manager. Once the papers were signed, Vanessa took a step closer to Tom, her voice softer now. I hope this is a lesson for you, Tom. You need to reflect on why you behaved the way you did, and how you can do better in the future. This isn't just about losing a job. It's about learning from your mistakes. Tom nodded numbly, unable to meet her eyes. He had been stripped of everything he thought made him important, and now, all he could do was walk away with what little dignity he had left. The tension in the air was palpable as Tom, his face ashen and shoulders slumped, slowly made his way towards the back of the store. The other employees watched in stunned silence, their eyes darting between Tom's retreating figure and Vanessa's composed stance. It was clear that a seismic shift had just occurred, and everyone in the store could feel the aftershocks. Vanessa took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment to process what had just happened. She hadn't come here looking for confrontation, but Tom's actions had left her with no choice. Now, as the new owner, she had a responsibility to set things right, not just for herself, but for every customer who might walk through those doors in the future. James leaned in close, his voice low. That went about as well as could be expected, he murmured. What's your next move? Vanessa's eyes scanned the store, taking in the mix of confused and curious faces. Some of the staff looked worried, no doubt wondering if their jobs were on the line as well. Others seemed almost relieved, as if a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. It was clear that Tom's leadership style had affected more than just the customers. We need to address everyone, Vanessa replied quietly. It's time to set a new tone for this place. James nodded, then turned to gather the rest of their team. Meanwhile, Vanessa stepped forward, her presence commanding attention even without her having to say a word. The whispers among the customers died down, and all eyes turned to her. Ladies and gentlemen, Vanessa began, her voice clear and steady. I want to apologize for the disturbance you've witnessed today. What you've seen is not representative of the values this store will uphold moving forward. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. A few customers nodded approvingly, while others leaned in, eager to hear more. My name is Vanessa Carter, and as of today, I am the new owner of this establishment. I came here incognito to observe how things were run, and I must say, I was deeply disappointed by what I saw. Vanessa's gaze swept across the room, making eye contact with as many people as she could. This store has a reputation for luxury and exclusivity, but somewhere along the way, that exclusivity turned into discrimination. That ends now. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some of the regular customers shifted uncomfortably, perhaps recognizing their own complicity in the store's toxic culture. Others, particularly those who had felt unwelcome before, seemed to stand a little taller, encouraged by Vanessa's words. From this moment forward, Vanessa continued, her voice growing stronger. This store will be a place of inclusivity and respect. We will continue to offer the finest products, but our true luxury will be in how we treat every single person who walks through those doors. She gestured towards the entrance, where a group of confused potential customers had gathered, drawn by the commotion inside. Vanessa smiled warmly at them, a stark contrast to the cold shoulder they might have received just hours earlier. To those of you who have felt unwelcome here in the past, I extend my sincerest apologies. I invite you to give us another chance. And to our loyal customers, I ask for your support as we make these necessary changes. True class isn't about excluding others. It's about lifting everyone up. As Vanessa finished speaking, a spontaneous round of applause broke out. It started small, just a few people near the front, but quickly spread throughout the store. Even some of the staff members, who had looked worried just moments ago, joined in, their faces showing a mix of relief and hope. James stepped forward, handing Vanessa a stack of papers. She nodded her thanks, then turned back to address the crowd once more. Now, I'd like to speak with all the staff members. If you're currently on shift, please gather near the main counter. For our customers, we'll be closing the store early today to facilitate this transition. We apologize for any inconvenience and hope to see you again soon. As the customers began to file out, many of them stopped to shake Vanessa's hand or offer words of support. One elderly woman, dressed in a fine silk blouse and pearls, paused in front of Vanessa, her eyes misty. "I've been coming to this store for 30 years, the woman said, her voice quavering slightly. "And I'm ashamed to say I never spoke up when I saw others being treated poorly. Thank you for doing what needed to be done." Vanessa squeezed the woman's hand gently. "Thank you for your honesty. It's never too late to stand up for what's right." As the last of the customers left, Vanessa turned her attention to the staff. They had gathered near the counter as instructed, their faces a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and in some cases, barely concealed hope. Vanessa could see the diversity among them, different ages, races, backgrounds, and she wondered how many of them had suffered under Tom's leadership. "First of all," Vanessa began, her tone warm but professional, "I want to assure you that your jobs are safe. What happened today with Tom was a specific response to his actions and the culture he fostered. It is not a reflection on any of you." A collective sigh of relief swept through the group. Shoulders relaxed, and a few smiles began to appear. "However," Vanessa continued, her voice taking on a more serious note, "we will be making some significant changes to how this store operates. I need to know that each and every one of you is on board with creating a more inclusive, respectful environment for all our customers." She paused, looking each staff member in the eye. "If anyone feels they can't commit to this new direction, now is the time to say so. There will be no judgment, and we'll provide references and assistance in finding new employment. But going forward, there will be zero tolerance for any form of discrimination or disrespect towards our customers or fellow staff members." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a young woman near the back raised her hand timidly. Vanessa nodded encouragingly, inviting her to speak. "Ms. Carter," the woman began, her voice soft but determined. "My name is Sarah. I've worked here for 2 years, and I've seen a lot of things that made me uncomfortable, but I was afraid to speak up because I needed this job. I want you to know that I'm fully on board with these changes. Thank you for doing this." Vanessa smiled warmly at Sarah. "Thank you for your honesty, Sarah. Your voice and experiences are valuable, and I want you to know that you'll always be heard here." Encouraged by Sarah's words, others began to speak up. A middle-aged man named Robert shared how he'd been passed over for promotions despite his experience, while a young salesperson named Jamal recounted times when he'd been told to keep an eye on certain customers based solely on their appearance. As Vanessa listened to their stories, she felt a mix of sadness and determination. The culture of discrimination ran deeper than she'd initially thought, but the fact that so many employees were eager for change gave her hope. "Thank you all for sharing," Vanessa said once everyone had spoken. "Your experiences and insights are invaluable as we move forward. Now let's talk about concrete changes." She gestured to James, who began distributing packets to each staff member. "In these packets, you'll find our new company policies regarding customer service, anti-discrimination practices, and employee conduct. Please review them carefully. We'll be holding training sessions over the next few weeks to ensure everyone understands and can implement these policies effectively." As the staff leafed through their packets, Vanessa continued, "We're also going to be making some changes to our inventory and marketing. We'll still offer luxury items, but we're going to expand our range to be more inclusive of different styles, sizes, and price points. Our goal is to make every customer feel like they belong here, regardless of their budget." A ripple of excitement went through the group. Several staff members nodded approvingly, while others began to whisper among themselves, already brainstorming ideas. "Additionally," Vanessa said, raising her voice slightly to regain attention, "we'll be implementing a new feedback system. This will allow both customers and employees to report any issues or concerns anonymously. We want to create an environment where everyone feels safe speaking up." She paused, letting her words sink in. Lastly, I want to address the issue of leadership. With Tom's departure, we'll need a new manager to help guide this transition. I've decided that instead of bringing in someone from outside, I'd like to promote from within. This announcement caused a stir among the staff. People straightened up, their eyes wide with interest and, in some cases, ambition. However, Vanessa continued, holding up a hand to quiet the murmurs, this decision won't be made lightly or quickly. Over the next month, I'll be working closely with all of you. I want to see who embodies the values we're promoting, who shows initiative in implementing our new policies, and who demonstrates true leadership skills. She smiled, her eyes twinkling with a hint of challenge. Consider this your audition period. Show me what you're capable of, not just in sales or customer service, but in creating the kind of inclusive, respectful environment we want this store to be known for. The energy in the room shifted palpably. Where there had been uncertainty and fear earlier, now there was excitement and determination. Vanessa could see the spark of motivation in their eyes, the eagerness to prove themselves and be part of something better. All right, Vanessa said, clapping her hands together. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I believe in each and every one of you. Let's take the rest of the day to review these new policies. Tomorrow, we'll reopen with a fresh start and a new outlook. Any questions? Hands shot up around the room, and Vanessa spent the next hour addressing concerns, clarifying points, and discussing ideas with her staff. By the time the last question was answered, the sun was beginning to set outside the store's large windows, casting a warm glow over the interior. As the staff began to gather their things and prepare to leave, Vanessa noticed Sarah, the young woman who had spoken up earlier, lingering near the counter. She approached her with a gentle smile. Sarah, isn't it? Vanessa asked. Is everything all right? Sarah nodded, twisting her hands nervously. Yes, Miss Carter. I wanted to thank you again. And to ask, well, I have some ideas about how we could make the store more welcoming. Would it be okay if I shared them with you sometime? Vanessa's smile widened. Of course, Sarah. In fact, why don't you come in a bit early tomorrow? We can discuss your ideas over coffee before we open. Sarah's face lit up. Really? That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Carter. As Sarah hurried off to gather her things, Vanessa felt a warm sense of satisfaction settle over her. This was just the beginning, but already she could see the potential for real, positive change. James approached, a small smile playing on his lips. Looks like you've got them fired up, he observed. Think this place has a chance? Vanessa nodded, her eyes sweeping across the store. More than a chance, James. We're going to turn this place around. It won't be easy, and I'm sure we'll face some resistance along the way. But we're going to create something special here. As the last of the staff filed out, calling their goodbyes, Vanessa and James began a final walkthrough of the store. They discussed logistics, reviewed the new policies, and strategized about the challenges that lay ahead. It was well past closing time when they finally finished. Standing at the entrance, Vanessa took one last look at the store before setting the alarm. In the quiet of the empty space, she could almost see the potential shimmering in the air, the promise of what this place could become. Ready to go? James asked, holding the door open. Vanessa nodded, stepping out into the cool evening air. As they walked down the street, the store's windows glowing softly behind them, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities. And she was ready for all of it. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect metaphor for the fresh start that awaited the store. Vanessa arrived early, a tray of coffee cups balanced in one hand and a box of pastries in the other. She wanted to set the right tone from the very beginning, one of warmth, inclusivity, and shared purpose. As she unlocked the front door, she was surprised to see Sarah already waiting, a thick notebook clutched to her chest. The young woman's eagerness brought a smile to Vanessa's face. Good morning, Sarah, Vanessa greeted warmly. I see you're as excited about today as I am. Come on in. They settled at a small table near the back of the store, the early morning sunlight streaming through the windows and casting a golden glow over the displays. As Vanessa poured coffee for both of them, Sarah began to flip through her notebook. Ms. Carter, I hope you don't mind, but I stayed up most of the night working on these ideas, Sarah said, her voice a mix of nervousness and excitement. I've been thinking about ways we could make the store more inclusive for a long time, but I never felt like I could speak up before. Vanessa leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. I'm all ears, Sarah. And please, call me Vanessa. Over the next hour, as they sipped their coffee and nibbled on pastries, Sarah laid out a series of thoughtful, innovative ideas. She proposed reorganizing the store layout to make it more accessible, suggested partnering with local artists from diverse backgrounds to showcase their work, and even presented a rough sketch for a community outreach program that would offer styling workshops for people of all body types and backgrounds. Vanessa listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes or asking questions. She was impressed not just by the ideas themselves, but by the passion and thought Sarah had put into them. It was clear that this young woman had been silently observing and planning for a long time, just waiting for an opportunity to make a difference. As Sarah finished presenting her last idea, she looked up at Vanessa anxiously, waiting for a response. Vanessa set down her coffee cup and smiled broadly. Sarah, these ideas are fantastic, she said warmly. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this, and I can see how much you care about making this store a better place. I'd like to implement several of these right away and explore the others in more depth. Sarah's face lit up with joy and relief. Really? You mean it? Vanessa nodded. Absolutely. In fact, I'd like you to take the lead on some of these projects. You have a unique perspective and a clear vision for what this store could be. That's exactly the kind of initiative and leadership I'm looking for. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, and she quickly wiped them away. Thank you, Vanessa. You have no idea how much this means to me. I've always loved fashion and retail, but I hated seeing how exclusive and unwelcoming it could be. I want to help change that. Vanessa reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. And you will. We both will. Now let's start planning how we're going to make these ideas a reality. As they dove back into discussion, other staff members began to arrive. Vanessa greeted each one personally, making sure they felt welcome and valued. She could see the mixture of anticipation and nervousness on their faces. Everyone knew that today marked the beginning of a new era for the store. Once everyone had arrived, Vanessa gathered them for a quick morning meeting. She outlined the day's goals, reminded everyone of the new policies, and emphasized the importance of making every customer feel welcome. Remember, she said, looking around at each face, we're not just selling clothes or accessories today. We're selling an experience, one of respect, inclusivity, and genuine care for our customers. Every interaction is an opportunity to show what this store stands for now. As she finished speaking, the staff broke into applause. The energy in the room was electric, a far cry from the tense atmosphere of the day before. Vanessa could see determination in their eyes, a shared commitment to making this new vision a reality. Just before opening time, as everyone was taking their positions, the front door chimed. Vanessa looked up, surprised. They weren't open yet. But her surprise turned to a warm smile when she saw who it was. Tom stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable and out of place without his usual managerial confidence. He shifted from foot to foot, his eyes darting around the store before finally settling on Vanessa. Miss Carter, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I hope you don't mind me coming by. I wanted to apologize. Properly this time. Vanessa approached him slowly, aware of the staff watching the interaction closely. Thank you for coming back, Tom. That must have been difficult for you. Tom nodded, swallowing hard. It was, but after I left yesterday, I couldn't stop thinking about everything. About how I've acted, the things I've said and done. I'm ashamed, Miss Carter. I've spent the night reflecting, and I realize now how wrong I've been. Not just with you, but with so many others over the years. Vanessa listened quietly, her expression neutral but attentive. She could see the genuine remorse in Tom's eyes, the way his shoulders slumped under the weight of his realizations. I don't expect forgiveness, Tom continued, his voice growing stronger. And I'm not here to ask for my job back. I needed to come and say I'm sorry. To you, and to everyone else I've hurt with my behavior. He turned to address the staff, who were watching the exchange with a mixture of surprise and wariness. I owe all of you an apology, too. I've been a terrible leader, and I've fostered a toxic environment. I'm truly sorry for that. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, to everyone's surprise, Sarah stepped forward. "Thank you, Tom," she said softly. "That couldn't have been easy to say." A few other staff members nodded, murmuring words of acknowledgement. The tension in the room began to ease, replaced by a sense of closure. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice firm but not unkind. "Thank you for coming back and apologizing, Tom. It shows a level of self-reflection and courage that I hope you'll continue to cultivate. While we can't erase the past, we can learn from it and do better moving forward." Tom nodded, blinking back tears. "I intend to. I've decided to take some time off, maybe do some volunteer work. I want to learn how to be a better person, how to treat others with the respect they deserve." Vanessa smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. "That sounds like an excellent plan, Tom. I wish you the best in your journey." As Tom turned to leave, Vanessa called out one last time. "And Tom, if you ever want to come back as a customer, you'll be welcome here. Just like everyone else?" Tom's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with gratitude. He nodded once more before stepping out, the door chiming softly behind him. As Vanessa turned back to her staff, she could see the impact of this moment written on their faces. It was as if the last vestiges of the old regime had been swept away, leaving room for something new and better to grow. "All right, team," Vanessa said, clapping her hands together. "That was an unexpected but important start to our day. Now, let's focus on what's ahead. We open in 5 minutes. Remember, today is about new beginnings for us, for our customers, and for this store. Let's make it count." The staff dispersed to their positions, a new energy in their steps. Vanessa moved to the front of the store, her hand on the lock. As the clock struck opening time, she turned the key and swung the door open wide. The first customer to enter was an elderly woman, the same one who had spoken to Vanessa the day before. She walked in hesitantly, looking around as if seeing the place for the first time. "Welcome," Vanessa greeted her warmly. "We're so glad to have you here." The woman smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Thank you, dear. I must say, there's something different about this place already. It feels lighter somehow." As Vanessa escorted her inside, more customers began to arrive. Some were regulars, curious about the changes they'd heard whispers of. Others were new faces, drawn in by the welcoming atmosphere that seemed to radiate from the store. Throughout the day, Vanessa watched with pride as her staff rose to the occasion. She saw Sarah confidently assisting a group of teenagers who might have been shooed away in the past. Robert was patiently helping an older gentleman navigate the new, more accessible store layout. And Jamal was engaged in an animated conversation with a customer about the local artist whose work now adorned the walls. There were challenges, of course. Some longtime customers grumbled about the changes, uncomfortable with the more diverse clientele. A few even left in a huff, declaring they'd take their business elsewhere. But for every customer lost, it seemed 2 new ones took their place, drawn by the store's new reputation for inclusivity and respect. As the day wore on, Vanessa found herself constantly on the move, offering guidance here, solving a problem there, always encouraging and supporting her team. By the time closing hour approached, she was exhausted but exhilarated. The last customer of the day was a young woman who entered just minutes before closing. She looked around nervously, clearly feeling out of place among the luxurious displays. In the past, she might have been subtly encouraged to leave. But today, Sarah approached her with a warm smile. "Welcome. Is there anything I can help you find?" Sarah asked, her voice friendly and free of judgment. The young woman hesitated. I'm not sure I can afford anything here. I just wanted to look around, if that's okay." Sarah's smile never faltered. "Of course it's okay. Everyone is welcome here, whether you're buying or just browsing. Why don't I show you around? We have some new collections that I think you might like." Vanessa watched from a distance as Sarah guided the young woman through the store, pointing out items in various price ranges and even suggesting some upcoming sales. By the time they finished their tour, the customer was smiling and chatting comfortably with Sarah. As the young woman left, promising to return for the upcoming sale, Vanessa felt a surge of pride. This was exactly the kind of interaction she had hoped to foster. one where every customer, regardless of their background or budget, felt valued and welcome. After locking the doors for the night, Vanessa gathered her staff for a final meeting. The excitement of the day still buzzed in the air, and faces that had been wary and uncertain that morning now shone with accomplishment and pride. "I want to thank each and every one of you," Vanessa began, her voice filled with warmth. "Today wasn't just about selling products. It was about setting a new standard, about showing the world what this store can be. And you all rose to the challenge beautifully." She went on to highlight specific moments she had observed throughout the day. Sarah's kindness to the nervous young woman, Robert's patience with the older customers, Jamal's enthusiasm in promoting the local artists. With each example, she could see her staff standing a little taller, their smiles growing wider. "This is just the beginning," Vanessa continued. "We have a long road ahead of us, and I'm sure we'll face more challenges. But if today is any indication, I have no doubt that we'll succeed. Together, we're going to redefine what luxury means in this industry. It's not just about expensive products. It's about how we make people feel when they walk through our doors." As the meeting concluded and the staff began to disperse, chatting excitedly about the day's events, Vanessa felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find James standing there, a bemused smile on his face. "Well," he said, "I'd say that was a successful first day. You've certainly shaken things up around here." Vanessa laughed, the sound filled with relief and joy. "We've made a good start, that's for sure. But we got a long way to go." James nodded, his expression turning more serious. "You know, when we first acquired this store, I thought it was just another business deal. But watching you today, seeing how you've already started to transform this place, I'm beginning to think we might be onto something bigger here." Vanessa's eyes sparkled with determination. "We are, James. This isn't just about turning a profit. It's about changing the way the fashion industry thinks about inclusivity and respect. And if we can do it here in one of the most exclusive stores in the city, then we can do it anywhere," James finished for her. "You might be starting a revolution here, Vanessa." She grinned, the exhaustion of the day momentarily forgotten in the face of the possibilities ahead. "A revolution in retail? I like the sound of that." As they walked out of the store together, Vanessa paused to look back at the building. The lights inside were dimming, but she could still see the changes they'd begun to implement. The more diverse mannequins in the windows, the local art on the walls, the rearranged layout that made the space more accessible. It was just the beginning, but already the store felt different. It felt right. "You know," Vanessa said softly, "when I first bought this place, I saw it as a challenge, a way to prove myself in the business world. But now, I think it might be more than that. It might be a calling." James squeezed her shoulder supportively. "If anyone can turn this industry around, it's you, Vanessa. Just remember to pace yourself. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will this new vision of yours." Vanessa nodded, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. "You're right. We made a great start, but there's still so much to do. Tomorrow, we'll start working on those community outreach programs Sarah suggested. And we need to reach out to more local designers, especially those from underrepresented communities. Oh, and we should look into hosting some educational events about sustainable fashion." James laughed, holding up his hands in mock surrender. All right. Save some of that enthusiasm for tomorrow. For now, let's celebrate today's success." "Dinner?" "My treat." As they walked down the street, Vanessa's mind was already racing with plans for the future. She knew there would be challenges ahead: resistant customers, industry pushback, the constant struggle to balance profitability with their new ethical standards. But after today, she also knew that she had a team behind her who believed in this vision just as much as she did. This store, once a symbol of exclusivity and discrimination, was on its way to becoming something entirely new, a beacon of inclusivity, respect, and positive change in the fashion industry. And Vanessa was ready to lead the way, one customer, one day, one small revolution at a time. As the store faded into the distance behind them, Vanessa felt a sense of peace settle over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities. And she was ready for all of it. The journey had just begun, and the best was yet to come. As weeks turned into months, Vanessa's vision for the store began to take shape in earnest. The changes were visible not just in the store's layout and inventory, but in the very atmosphere of the place. Where once there had been an air of exclusivity and judgment, now there was warmth and welcome. But with change came challenges, and Vanessa found herself navigating increasingly complex waters. It was a busy Saturday afternoon when the first major test of their new policies arose. Vanessa was in her office, reviewing the latest sales figures with James, when Sarah burst in, slightly out of breath. "Vanessa, we have a situation," Sarah said, her usual composure slipping. "There's a customer. Well, she's causing quite a scene." Vanessa was on her feet immediately. "What's happening?" As they hurried to the sales floor, Sarah filled her in. A long-time customer, known for her expensive tastes and difficult personality, was berating one of the newer sales associates. The issue? The store's new, more inclusive sizing policy. As they approached, Vanessa could hear the customer's shrill voice cutting through the usual hum of the store. "This is ridiculous," the woman was saying, waving a designer dress in the air. "You've ruined the exclusivity of this brand by catering to." She trailed off as Vanessa stepped forward, but the implication was clear. The woman's face was flushed with anger, while the young sales associate looked close to tears. "Is there a problem here?" Vanessa asked calmly, placing herself between the customer and the associate. The woman turned her glare on Vanessa. "You're damn right there's a problem. I've been shopping here for 20 years, and I've never been so insulted. How dare you dilute these luxury brands with oversized options? It's inclusive." Vanessa supplied, her voice level but firm. "Representative of our diverse customer base, in line with our commitment to making fashion accessible to all." The woman sputtered, caught off guard by Vanessa's directness. "It's not right," she finally managed. "This store used to stand for something." Vanessa nodded, her expression softening slightly. "You're right. This store did stand for something. It stood for exclusivity, for catering to a select few while making others feel unwelcome. But that's not what we stand for anymore." She gestured around the store, where customers of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds were browsing and shopping. "We stand for the belief that everyone deserves to feel beautiful and valued. That luxury isn't about exclusion, but about how an item makes you feel when you wear it." The woman's anger seemed to deflate slightly, replaced by confusion and a hint of something else. Perhaps realization? But what about the prestige?" she asked, her voice smaller now. "If anyone can shop here, what makes it special?" Vanessa smiled gently. "What makes it special is the experience we provide, the quality of our products, and the way we treat our customers, all of our customers. Prestige isn't about keeping others out. It's about setting a standard that elevates everyone." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, to everyone's surprise, the woman's shoulders sagged. I never thought about it that way," she admitted quietly. Vanessa placed a hand on her arm. "Change can be difficult, but I invite you to give our new approach a chance. You might be surprised at how much richer the experience can be when we open our doors to everyone." The woman nodded slowly, her earlier anger replaced by thoughtfulness. As Vanessa guided her towards some of their new collections, explaining the philosophy behind each piece, she could see the woman's perspective beginning to shift. By the time the customer left, with several purchases from their new inclusive line, Vanessa felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. It had been a challenging interaction, but also a rewarding one. This was the kind of change she had hoped to inspire. As the store quieted down for the evening, Vanessa gathered her team for a debrief. She praised the young associate for maintaining composure in a difficult situation and used the incident as a teaching moment for everyone. "We're not just changing our policies," she explained. "We're changing mindsets. And that's not always going to be easy. But moments like today, that's how we make a real difference." The team nodded, energized by the day's events. As they dispersed, Sarah lingered behind. "Vanessa," she said hesitantly, "there's something else we need to discuss." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what's on your mind?" Sarah took a deep breath. "It's about our supplier for the new eco-friendly line. I've been doing some research, and, well, I don't think they're as ethical as they claim to be." Vanessa's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Over the next hour, Sarah laid out her findings. The supplier, while marketing themselves as sustainable and ethical, had some questionable practices in their overseas factories. Nothing definitively illegal, but certainly not up to the standards Vanessa had set for the store. As Sarah finished her presentation, Vanessa leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This line was set to be a major part of their upcoming collection. Canceling it would be a significant financial hit, not to mention the logistical nightmare of finding a new supplier on short notice. But as she looked at Sarah's earnest face, at the evidence she'd so carefully compiled, Vanessa knew there was only one right choice. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Sarah," Vanessa said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "First thing Monday, we'll start looking for a new supplier, one that truly aligns with our values." Sarah's eyes widened. But the collection launch isn't just a few weeks. And the financial impact? Vanessa held up a hand. "You're right. It won't be easy. But if we compromise on our ethics for convenience or profit, then everything else we're doing here is meaningless. We have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk." As Sarah left, energized by Vanessa's commitment, James entered the office. He'd overheard enough to understand the situation. "You know," he said, settling into a chair across from Vanessa, "a year ago, I would have thought you were crazy for making a decision like that. But now, I think you're right. It's the only choice that makes sense for what we're trying to build here." Vanessa smiled tiredly. "It's going to be a challenge. We'll need to work overtime to make this happen." James nodded, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "Well, then we better get started. I'll start reaching out to potential new suppliers tonight." As James left to make calls, Vanessa turned to look out the window. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. She could see people walking by the store, some pausing to look at the window displays that now showcased a diverse range of mannequins and styles. In that moment, despite the challenges ahead, Vanessa felt a surge of pride and purpose. They were making a difference not just in their store, but in the industry as a whole. Every difficult decision, every small victory, was a step towards the change she envisioned. She thought back to that first day, when she'd walked into the store incognito and faced Tom's discrimination. So much had changed since then, but there was still so much work to do. Turning back to her desk, Vanessa pulled out a notepad and began to write. Ideas for community outreach programs, plans for collaborations with up-and-coming diverse designers, strategies for making their supply chain more transparent and ethical. The list grew as her pen flew across the page. The road ahead would be challenging, she knew. There would be more difficult customers, more ethical dilemmas, more industry pushback. But as she looked at the growing list of ideas and initiatives, Vanessa felt a renewed sense of determination. This wasn't just about running a successful store anymore. It was about changing the face of fashion, about proving that inclusivity and ethics could go hand in hand with luxury and style. It was about creating a space where everyone, regardless of their size, race, gender, or background, could feel valued and beautiful. As the last light faded from the sky, Vanessa stood up, gathering her things. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities. And she was ready for all of it. Walking out of the store, she paused to look back at the building that had become so much more than just a business. It was a symbol of change, a beacon of hope in an industry often criticized for its exclusivity and ethical shortcomings. With a smile, Vanessa turned and walked into the night, her mind already planning for the battles and triumphs that lay ahead. The revolution in retail had only just begun. What would you do if you were in Vanessa's position, facing a life-changing decision after a public confrontation and a dramatic revelation? Would you have handled the situation with the same calm determination, or would you have approached it differently? If you found this story of prejudice, redemption, and the impact of standing up for what's right compelling, please consider subscribing to my channel. I put a lot of effort into crafting these impactful narratives, and your support truly means the world to me. Thank you for being a part of this journey.